Okay, guys. There's a couple of tutorials I've done in the past, but this is what I want to do for you guys to sort of show how I want you guys to sort of cut stuff out and use masking and transform. Okay, transform is one of the coolest tools we've got in Photoshop, I think, and I use it for composites all the time. So I just want to sort of go through transform tools with you, so you can see them and play with them a little bit this week. They're really fun to play with, and when you combine transform with masking, it's like magic. It's phenomenal. This is Anna Susie. She's a model I work with down in San Francisco. So I'm going to use this shot and play with her a little bit and show you guys what I'm talking about when I say transformation and masking. So if I hit Command plus and bring this bigger, enlarge this, and use my space bar to pull this down, we can see Anna's face, and that's where the transformation that I'm going to have happen is going to happen. Okay. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make Anna's nose a little bit bigger, just for kicks, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my selection tool, and I'm going to use the lasso tool here. And we learned about feathering and stuff and things like that. And I'm going to feather it about 10 pixels, just as an arbitrary soften for the edges. And I'm going to grab and highlight her nose like this. I'm just going to sort of grab a thing like that, a selection, and I'm going to hit Command J. And what Command J does is it takes that nose and puts it on its own layer. Okay? So now I've got Command J on its own layer. And the reason I'm working like this is I'm going to start transforming and I'll show you. But if I go to the Move tool, I now have that nose on its own layer, right? So let's put that back with Command Z. Put it back. We're going to go to Layer 1, and I'm going to actually name this Nose, because I really want to know where that is and I want to be able to find it later. Okay, so I name that Nose. Now I know my nose is there, or Anna's nose is there. So if I hit Command plus and blow up a little more, and move this around, I'm going to make her nose bigger. So if I hit Command T, that's transform. Now, this transform box is cool because if we go like this and move stuff around, you can move things back and forth up top. You can stretch it or skew it like this. But if you notice this sort of skews it disproportionately, and you may want that. You may want a nose that looks like that, right? That may be your deal. But if you look around the edges, I've enlarged this and made this its own layer and dropped it in, and it actually fits pretty well already, right? And that's because the light and shadow and stuff is all even, and it's consistent with the model. Now when you get into compositing where you're dropping things in that don't have consistent light and shadow, it's much more difficult. But if you'll see, I can do that, right? And make this nose bigger and make her look amazing. So if I hit return, it makes the transformation complete, and I'm good to go. Well, I don't really want it looking like that because no, actually I do like that. But let me show you something else real quick. Let's undo that by Command Z. If I hit Command T and transform, if I hold Shift down when I pull from a corner, it keeps things proportional, so you can't skew it. See how I'm trying to like stretch it and stuff from a corner if you pull it? It makes it consistent and proportional as you pull up and down. And that's if you hold Shift down. Now I want to screw her nose up pretty bad, so I'm going to let go of Shift, and I'm just going to pull wide here, and I'm going to stretch it and distort the crap out of it. Okay, because I think this looks better. This looks cool. Okay, so let's make this nose gigantic and anatomically not correct. Okay, I hit return, and now look at her nose. Now, there's going to be some things I want to do to this. Number one, there's some fuzzy edges and stuff that go into her eye. You can see where it sort of goes in. What I'm going to do with that is I'm going to mask this now. Now, if you remember with masking, what we did was we made an adjustment layer, and then with black, we painted on the mask, and we hit it. With white, revealed it. Okay? Well, here, if we click on the mask and mask this now, we can't paint white on white because that doesn't do anything. That brings this nose back. But if we go to black and go to our brush, I'm going to use a 30% opacity and make sure up here it's a soft brush. The hardness is 0. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to start painting this out, right? I'm going to paint out really gently around the edges and make it blend better. And so now look at that. That nose flipping blends there really well. Okay? Now we go back and look what we did. Awesome, right? Yeah, that's fantastic. So now what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to do something to her lip too, okay? And her mouth. No, I'm going to do something to her eyes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the background where my pixels are, because this is just the nose, remember. I go to my background, I go to my lasso tool, I'm going to come up and I'm going to select, actually I'm going to do something to her eyebrows. I'm going to select this eyebrow right here, I'm going to grab it, I'm going to hit Command J. Okay, now I have that eyebrow in its own layer. I'm going to call this eyebrow. Okay. And now it's eyebrows right there. Okay, and I'm going to transform it. Command T. Now, with transform, we don't just have the shift and pull option, which I showed you before. If you right click in this box, you get a ton of stuff in here. Look, you can flip this horizontal and make it the wrong way. You can flip it vertically and make it upside down. We'll flip it back. And flip it back horizontally again. You can rotate it. You can warp it. You can perspective it. Play with these. These are super fun, you guys. I like warp because you can really screw with this stuff and it's really fun to play with, right? Like I like warp a lot. Like that. And there's our eyebrow. Now, if we have some messy stuff in here we need to clean up, well, what do? We mask the extra information by clicking on a mask down here, adding a mask, making sure we're on our black because we have a white mask showing, and then we go to our brush and we just sort of clean it up in here a little bit, make sure there's no fuzzy skin stuff that we didn't want on the edge. Done. Right? So look what we're doing. We're transforming. So awesome. Now let's say we want to add something else into this, right? Like let's say we want to drop a pumpkin in there, like on her head. I don't even know, right? So we'll pull this off a little bit. We'll find our pumpkin that I shot, and we're going to take this with the move tool, and we're going to just drop this pumpkin into here like that. So now if we bring this back and put it back on in our workspace, this pumpkin, see the layer it came up on? It says it's on its own layer. Well, I'm going to call that layer pumpkin because it's important to label all your layers so you know what you're doing. Okay, now this is when you guys mentioned you wanted to add stuff to an image. Well, we're adding this pumpkin to her head. So you notice her nose is above this and in front of this. Why is that? Well, the pumpkin layer is below the nose layer. So we have to take the pumpkin layer and put it on top, and now it's in front of everything else. So now I can move it around. Now I'd like to put this pumpkin maybe on her head. I don't know, right? I don't know what I'm going to do to it. I may have set it next to her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask it. Now there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but just for the homework today, and for this week, I want you guys to mask this out and hand mask it, okay? Which means you're going to add a mask to this, click, and then after that you're going to take your brush on black because this is white, and you're going to go through and be super awesome and hand mask this. Now I know I'm going to take all this white out, so I'm going to put this at 100% and I'm going to just wipe this stuff out, right? I'm going to come through and like hand mask this all out. Now you're probably wondering, are there other faster ways to do this? And yes, there actually are. There's a million faster ways to do a lot of things. But I still want you guys to sort of do it this way just for this week. And we'll get into like other complicated and a little more technical stuff in terms of selections and masking as we go along. But for this week, I just want you guys to do it like this, okay? Now remember, if you get too crazy and get into the pumpkin, I always blow up and work with a small brush here. You just go back. I'm on black now. You just go back and use X to go back to white. Or you can click the little arrow here, and once you're back on white, you're putting the pumpkin back. See that? So you're going back and forth. I'm toggling back and forth with the X key. Okay? And using a small brush to pick off this edge really well. And you'll see as you start hand masking, it's sort of a pain in the butt. But it's super useful to get in the habit of being able to do this really well. So my brush is really soft and it's bugging me, so I'm going to make it a little harder so my edge is a little crispier and it works better for me, right? Because I don't want to take this time to do this in this demo. So I'm going to do this really rough, and you guys are probably, I'm sorry, but I figure I wouldn't want to hear my voice this long, and so I know you guys probably don't either, and so I'm going to just do a really rough job of this. But you get the idea, yeah? You can see what I'm doing. I'm masking this pumpkin out. Shoot. That was a little bit of a crappy job up there. Let's put that back. bottom. And okay. I feel like this sucks in terms of the selection I just did and the hand masking I did. But you guys, I'm also in a hurry and I'm trying to get this done so that you guys can see this. So let's just get this white out of here because it's driving me nuts. Okay, there's my pumpkin, right? There's the pumpkin, there's she, my pumpkin's right here. Now, I'm going to move my pumpkin with the move tool and I'm going to put it over, I don't know, somewhere else probably. Like right next to her, right there. Kiddo? Well, I wonder if I want to do, okay, so if you want to transform your pumpkin afterwards because you think it might be too big, and I think it is, because originally you guys, I actually want to take this and replace her head with it, okay? And I think I might still. So it's too big, right? So one of the tools you guys can use when you're dropping things and trying to get them to match is opacity. So I've got this pumpkin layer right here, and there's my pumpkin layer. The opacity of it's right here, and if I want to see through it to see what's underneath it, I just go like this and drop the opacity of it, and now you can start seeing what's underneath it, right? And now I can see that she's under there, and her head's not nearly like that big. I could make it that big if I want to transform it, but I think I'm going to make the pumpkin smaller. So if I transform the pumpkin, Command T, and I hold Shift down and go from the corner and make it proportional, I can pretty much try to match her head, you guys, right? I'm going to try to cover her hair and stuff too. There. Okay. So I've got this right dead on her face. I might squeeze in a little bit and distort it. Let's make it look a little more like her head and distort this thing, right? And then let's warp it. Let's warp this and make this pumpkin screwed up because I feel like it's going to be screwed up anyway and look pretty weird. So why not embrace the weird, dude, and just like really screw it up, right? I mean, come on. Let's just squash the crap out of this pumpkin head and make it look super awesome. So I'm just pulling in you guys on these little points and yeah, do my best to make it look gross. So yeah, well, let's just leave it like, I got to bring the top higher to cover her hair. Let's do that. Okay, so if I return, now my transformation is complete, it's solidified. I'm going to bring the opacity back up. And you can see it covers her completely. But guess what? It covers her hand, which looks really weird, and it doesn't look right, right? Correct? I mean, so that doesn't look right to me at all. So if I drop the opacity again on that, so I can see where the fingers are, I can come back to my mask, you guys, and if I paint with black, which I'm already on black, if I go to my brush, right there, and I blow this up, I can actually go through and paint that pumpkin out, right? So let's paint the pumpkin out just where her fingers are. So the pumpkin is over her fingers, and I'm masking and hiding the pumpkin wherever her fingers are, so it'll look like that, well, look like she's touching the pumpkin as her face, right? Looks like it's below it. So now if we shrink this back down and bring the opacity back up, we can see that actually sold it a little better, right? Now what else would sell it better? Probably blending the hair and stuff and making a shadow down here and some other things. But you guys sort of get the point, right? The importance of like transforming and masking. If you look, I've got my pumpkin layer. I've got my nose. I got my nose layer, right? I'm toggling this off and on so you can see it. And then I've got my eyebrow layer. Okay? So this is all, you guys, how you use transform and how you mask objects and transform them. Okay? This will be part of your assignment this week that goes with self-portraits. And I would, if you want, I would totally like, I think it'd be really fun to play with some stuff, play with some facial features, right? Okie doke.